In Japan, it was the electric shock that restarted a waning franchise, tossing everything that longtime fans loved about the series right out the window in favor of whatever needed to be done to make it exciting and fresh for a new audience, pitting generation against generation, tearing the fanbase apart from inside out. In the US, it was just another Gundam series. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Mobile Fighter G Gundam. Thank you to Toodaloo for sponsoring this video. Use code TOYGALAXY to get $5 off your purchase today. What's a guy gotta do to find genuinely healthy snacks that taste great? I feel like I'm drowning in a sea of powdered nacho cheese and chemically constituted chocolate chips. Toodaloo is here to save you with trail mix that not only tastes great, but supports your physical and mental well-being. Made with over 30 thoughtfully sourced superfoods like organic goji berries, blueberries, and sprouted nuts. Toodaloo is non-GMO, gluten-free, grain-free, plant-based with no processed sugars, but it is very supportive of focus, gut health, and energy, so you can feel better on the outside thanks to the things you put on the inside. Toodaloo comes in a variety of flavors like Turning Heads, Hot to Trot, and Smoke Show. My favorite is Slow Your Roll, a sweet maple mix of sprouted nuts and seeds, chewy superfruits, coconut, reishi, all in support of relaxation. The second best reason to eat snacks in the first place, the best reason being I am starving. Every order of Toodaloo is good for you and good for the planet through a partnership with the Rodale Institute, leaders in the regenerative organic farming movement. They're doing the work to give back to the planet what they take from it. Toodaloo comes with an OMG guarantee. If you don't agree that Toodaloo is the most delicious trail mix you've ever eaten, they'll refund your full purchase price. Go to toodaloo.com/toygalaxy and use my code TOYGALAXY to get $5 off your first order. Thank you again to Toodaloo. Mobile Fighter G Gundam, or just plain G Gundam, is a 49-episode animated series that first aired in Japan in 1994 during the 15th anniversary of the Gundam franchise, a controversial reboot that ignored everything that came before it, and successfully carved a path into the future and onto toy shelves in the US and around the world. In the distant future, humans have inevitably ruined planet Earth. Those who can afford to have relocated to orbiting space colonies, while everyone else just has to live with the mess. But good news, there are very smart people who are working on solutions that might also be entertaining, violent, and profitable. Instead of cumbersome bureaucratic electoral processes, each country on Earth will construct a giant weaponized piloted mech suit, a fighting robot called a Gundam, and Earth itself will be a literal arena for a contest of champions. Every 4 years, a tournament will be held with all of the countries around the world battling it out for Gundam supremacy, winner take all for power over humanity on Earth and in space, a planet-wide Gundam fight where Gundam might makes Gundam right. And that's Earth's reality for 12 tournaments, nearly 60 years until a new program developed by Dr. Cashew and his son Kyoji called the Ultimate Gundam. Their goal was to use nanotechnology, allowing this Gundam to self-recover, self-multiply, and self-evolve in service of repairing the damage done to Earth before and because of the Gundam fights. Despite the noble purpose of its creation, the power of the Ultimate Gundam is beyond anything that has ever existed, beyond all temptations that have ever existed. The Ultimate Gundam is stolen by Kyoji in an effort to keep it out of the hands of those who would abuse its power, so he can abuse it himself. Kyoji crashes the Ultimate Gundam on Earth, damaging the Gundam in the process. The nanotechnology activates, transforming itself into the Devil Gundam, at which point it decides that the only way to properly clean up the Earth is to destroy all humans. But there is still hope for tomorrow. Dr. Cashew's other son, Domon, has been training to become the best Gundam fighter, and he's ready to prove it in the ring on Earth in the 13th Gundam fight. He'll have to defeat Gundam pilots from all over the world, and in the process destroy the Devil Gundam if there's any hope to save his family, his friends, the planet, and the love of his life. Mobile Fighter G Gundam first aired in the US on Cartoon Network as part of its Toonami block of shows in August of 2002, 8 years after its original airing in Japan in 1994. Part of a long-delayed embrace of the Gundam franchise in the US by television producers, toy retailers, and the public in general. The Gundam franchise began in 1979 with Mobile Suit Gundam created by Yoshiyuki Tomino. Produced by Sunrise, it marked a drastic shift away from super robots to real robots in Japanese giant robot cartoons. Super robots were the heroic primary-colored Saturday morning heroes of the 60s and 70s. Guy King, Ray Dean, Mazinger Z, Grandizer, you might know them as Shogun Warriors in the US. Super robot cartoons were, by design, intended for kids. Episodes had basic plots where the giant robots fought against kaiju or evil robots to save the Earth by the end of each 22-minute episode. Their weapons were sometimes supernatural in origin, and their powers were frequently dependent upon questionable scientific principles. In 1979, Mobile Suit Gundam opted to tell a more mature story, to place these giant robots in the context of real-world political conflict and the horrors of war in the future. To demonstrate how the advancement of technology will increase the scale of death and destruction, and reveal the emergence of previously unknown human abilities that lead to more death and destruction. That new real approach to robots fighting kicked off a whole new genre of animation, but also a whole new line of products. Mobile Suit Gundam's audience was older and looking for merchandise that reflected their station. Toys were for kids, but model kits were for older kids who felt like adults. Gundam plastic model kits and the hobby of building them made up a substantial part of the pop culture economy and Bandai's business overall, ensuring that Gundam would continue into the future with sequels to introduce more robots, to make more model kits, toys, bedsheets, hats, and everything else you could put Gundam on. And that worked great for about a decade, and then things started to taper off. Whether it was the content of the subsequent series or the audience moving on to other things, the reality is that the model and toy manufacturers weren't selling as much stuff. And for any long-term franchise, that means it's either time to admit that it's no longer relevant, or it's time to shake things up. It's no coincidence that this franchise shakeup happened in 1993, just as Bandai, the company making most of the toys, model kits, and video games, merged with Sunrise, the production studio that created Gundam. The new direction for Gundam would be one that focused on bringing in a new generation of fans unburdened by hundreds of hours of animation and thousands of pages of comics. Yasuhiro Imagawa was selected to direct the new series. He had previously worked with original Gundam creator Yoshiyuki Tomino on several projects, including 1982's Zabunguru, 1983's Aura Battler Dunbine, and 1985's Zeta Gundam. He could be trusted to carry on the Tomino legacy and hopefully inherit some trust and goodwill from older fans. Imagawa's ideas for the new Gundam series were quickly brushed aside by producer Sunrise and sponsors Bandai, Sotsu, and Detsu. They already knew where they wanted to take the franchise. They just needed him to play along. Play being the operative word there, because the Gundam designs prioritized the toys and models to be produced and worked their way back to animation in a reverse of the usual process. And this time everything was themed around a global fighting competition, not unlike the wildly popular arcade hit Street Fighter II, which was raking in billions and quarters as the highest grossing arcade game of 1991, 1992, and 1993. Imagawa thought the nationality-inspired designs were, in his words, terrible. His head was spinning. What if the nationality-based designs were considered offensive, he asked. To which they responded, and I'm paraphrasing here, "It's not even real countries. We put Neo at the beginning of them." A global Gundam fighting tournament was a dream concept to create a crap ton of different Gundams and crank out the toys. Rising Gundam, Shining Gundam, and God Gundam, aka Burning Gundam from Neo Japan, Master Gundam from Neo Hong Kong, Gundam Maxter from Neo America, Southern Cross Gundam, Browning Gundam, and Mermaid Gundam from Neo Australia, Belgium, and Denmark. Oh, and Lumber Gundam, aka Grizzly Gundam from Neo Canada.
スーパーモードに完全変形デラックスシャイニングガンダムモビルファイターシリーズもレディーゴーガンダム買うとオーラッキーガンダム買うとかっこいいガンダム買うと大当たりこの場で豪華商品が入ったりますガンダム大当たりガンダムメーカーキャンペーンポスター見てね
Imagawa had a choice to make. Buy in on the new concept, take a shot at putting his stamp on the Gundam franchise, or walk away with his dignity intact and let someone else do whatever this was to the beloved national treasure that was Gundam. Imagawa wanted to walk away, but before he did, he decided to test the toy and model makers. He designed a Gundam that had a cape that turned into wings, something that could not possibly be replicated as a toy design. Oh, until it was. Another with an energy weapon that was incorporated into the articulated hands, something that had never been done on the series before. That was not even possible. Oh, until they were able to do that too. And he thought the toys actually looked
pretty good.
Imagawa had a change of heart. It occurred to him that this business of animation wasn't self-funding. It wasn't something that organically materialized into the world. It didn't happen by strength of will or depth of desire. It took money. And at the end of the day, all Imagawa really wanted to do was make animation. If a cooperative partnership with sponsors and toy makers is what it took to be able to tell stories with animation, then by Gundam, that's what he was gonna do. Imagawa leaned into the new direction for Gundam, leaned into telling a new Gundam story for the 90s kids, embraced the freedom of being unbound to the previous political drama, characters, and technology of the franchise, rewriting Gundam history. A new past for a new present and a new future with surprises around every corner. A new timeline was a crucial decision because every previous Gundam series had taken place in the same universe, in the same timeline, the Universal Century timeline. G Gundam was deliberately creating a new future century with its own politics, its own motivations, and its own tragedies, independent of everything in the Universal Century timeline. Imagawa was able to inject his own perspective and his personal interests into the design of the series, paying homage to his love of cinema with locations inspired by the works of filmmakers like Federico Fellini, Alfred Hitchcock, the use of a narrator to introduce each episode just like Star Trek or The Twilight Zone. Imagawa has admitted that he was concerned that the other members of his team would be upset with him about all the changes that were being made to the franchise on his watch. He said, quote, "Much of the Gundam staff was upset by the changes in the Gundam formula. Some complained and others outright left. I was afraid of walking alone at night since someone might stab me for doing this to Gundam." Mobile Fighter G Gundam hit Japanese television on April 22, 1994 with 49 episodes through March 31, 1995. It posted decent ratings, certainly better than 1993's Mobile Suit Victory Gundam. More importantly, it accomplished what it set out to do. Despite the controversy over its dismissal of Gundam canon, it engaged a new fan base with a new style of Gundam series and supercharged the toy and model kit sales. It set the stage for future Gundam series to do whatever they wanted to do to tell a new, self-contained Gundam story irrespective of anything that came before, which today is still the default. 6 years after G Gundam aired in Japan, the US got its first real taste of the Gundam franchise with Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, the 1995 series that followed G Gundam in Japan, a series that might not have happened if not for the decisions made during G Gundam. Imported to the US by Bandai Entertainment, Gundam Wing was the long-anticipated arrival of the celebrated pop culture franchise after more than 20 years. A moderate success in Japan, Gundam Wing had just the right amount of action, adventure, and echoes of Voltron and Power Rangers to appeal to the US audience. It was a perfect fit for Cartoon Network's Toonami programming block. Starting in 1998, Toonami focused on Japanese animation with shows like Robotech, Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, Ronin Warriors, and G-Force. And Gundam Wing blew the doors off everything else that was airing on Toonami. And everything else that was airing on Cartoon Network. After their success with Gundam Wing, they started airing anything and everything Gundam they could get their hands on. The original Mobile Suit Gundam in July of 2001, followed immediately by Mobile Suit Gundam The 8th MS Team and Mobile Suit Gundam War in the Pocket. Those shows didn't connect with the audience the same way Gundam Wing did. Those Universal Century Gundam stories didn't have the same kind of superheroic action that Wing had, not to mention that heavy war stories were being discouraged from broadcast, if not pulled altogether, as a side effect of September 11th. But that was okay, because the US audience wasn't as emotionally invested in the continuity of the Universal Century stories. Their excitement was definitely more tuned to a series kind of like Wing Gundam, which G Gundam was, having led to Wing Gundam in Japan. Mobile Fighter G Gundam aired on Toonami nearly a year later in August of 2002 with most of the original story intact, but a few name changes here and there for localization purposes. The heroic God Gundam was changed to Burning Gundam to avoid any reference to religion. Same with Devil Gundam becoming Dark Gundam. In fact, the whole Death Army was changed to the Dark Army because as much as Gundam was created to sell toys to kids in Japan, there are different standards for kids in the US.
Where's all this coming from, Vince?
It's coming from deep within. I'm a punk now.
And not for nothing, but one of the largest retailers in the US, Walmart, was a necessary partner for Bandai America for the sale of Gundam toys. And they weren't terribly excited about stocking a toy called Gundam Heaven's Sword. That was changed to Soaring Raven Gundam, a lesson Bandai learned from Walmart's decision not to stock the Gundam Death Scythe Hell as part of the Gundam Wing line a year earlier. Tequila Gundam was changed to Spike Gundam to avoid any reference to alcohol. Bandai continued to sell a lot of toys and model kits. Nearly every Gundam in the Gundam fights got an action figure. Viking Gundam, Bolt Gundam, Toro Gundam, Gundam Scythe, Noble Gundam, even Funsaiki, the Horse Gundam piloted by a horse.
What's going on?
As with nearly every animated series in Japan, Mobile Fighter G Gundam had a significant comic book presence, and when it came to the US, Tokyopop brought many of those comics over at the time as well. Years later, despite the end title of the final episode of G Gundam teasing the 14th Gundam fight, Imagawa insisted that there would never be a sequel, that there never could be a sequel. The closest he would get was a comic adaptation, a retelling of the G Gundam saga from 2010 to 2016 in Gundam Ace magazine. Written by Imagawa and illustrated by Kazuhiko Shimamoto, who also worked on the original G Gundam series, Imagawa has called the collaboration the complete version of the story, the masterwork version. Bandai's rollout of G Gundam in Japan included a Street Fighter II clone for the Super Famicom, a 2D fighter as was the style at the time. Players can pick from popular Gundams like God Gundam and Gundam Maxter to fight their way through the other challengers to confront Devil Gundam. It was never officially released in the US. Bandai America released the entire G Gundam series on DVD in the US. Both English and Japanese audio tracks are included, as well as extras like production notes. It also includes the original Gundam names in the English subtitles, but the American names are still used in the dialogue. Right Stuff released it on Blu-ray in 2018. As of this video, you can stream the entire series on Crunchyroll or via the official Gundam channel here on YouTube. Bandai called G Gundam a hit in the US and reported that it had top ratings of any anime show airing at the time. That was tempered by Toonami in 2006 when they said that none of the Gundam series that followed Gundam Wing performed nearly as well. Both things can be true.
Yeah, and I'm angry.
Oh yeah, what are you angry about?
About stuff.
The most important thing G Gundam did was to reboot the franchise in Japan, where it remains one of the most popular pop culture icons, one of the most profitable pop culture icons, and to solidify Gundam as a viable property in the US. It was the variety of Gundam designs and the dazzling superhero action that accomplished the mainstream acceptance in the US, from the Sailor Moon-inspired Noble Gundam to Ashura Gundam and Skull Gundam, two Gundams that were designed by fans in a contest held during production in Japan. From the Western perspective, Gundam was like Power Rangers, a franchise that had theme and variation baked into its DNA, refreshing itself every year, if not every few months, based on the Toonami release schedule. The toy buying and model kit building were, in many cases, more important than the shows themselves. A horse piloting a horse Gundam in Japan was a slap in the face to many. In the US, it's just another Gundam. No more ridiculous than the one with the bird wings, or that cosplays as the Grim Reaper. One timeline for the first 14 years, at least 9 more in the following 26 years. A freedom it had never known, a freedom that allowed it to continue to grow and thrive. For all its betrayal of Gundam traditions, once the dust had settled, director Imagawa was proud of the achievement. Proud to put his name not only on the series, but on the milestone moment of the Gundam franchise. As he put it, "This is my Gundam, and I've made a Gundam that I can be proud of." Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, if you would like early access to the videos ad-free, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy and let us know in the comments down below if you were or are a fan of G Gundam, and if so, what's your favorite Gundam from the series? I've always liked Gundam Maxter because it's an over-the-top stereotype of the US with his football helmet head, boxing gloves, 6 shooters, and surfboard, but nothing is better than Funsaiki, the Gundam horse piloted by a horse. It's been nearly 30 years since the creation of Mobile Fighter G Gundam, and I am still waiting on an all-animal Gundam series. No offense to horses, but if a horse can pilot a Gundam, any animal can pilot a Gundam. Where's the cat Gundam that only responds to Gundam treats and licks itself at the most inappropriate times in the most inappropriate places? Cut.